We don't see my brother Merle and sister-in-law Pat very often because we live so far apart. So we decided to meet them the other day in Miami, Oklahoma. So we met them at a restaurant called Montana Mike's in downtown Miami. We had a nice visit as we caught up on things for the last few weeks and months. Anyway, after all of that, then they went their way and we went ours, and this is what happened.
When we had finished lunch at Montana Mike's, Merle and Pat headed on toward home, but they wanted to find the courthouse where 44 years ago, December 18th, 1969, they applied for a marriage license, and also the chapel near there where they were married. They wanted to find that since we were in Miami, so they took off to do that. And Marilyn and I headed up north on Main Street, which is Highway 69, to connect to Old Route 66, and do some sightseeing and some video work up that way. So we went up to do that, and then as we came back, Merle called Pat. That's as bad as trying to remember the names of my kids. Marilyn called Merle and asked him if they found the courthouse and where it was. So when we got back down, we went by there. But I'm including that part in here first, mostly for their benefit so they can see it without watching this whole thing. So we went on up, did what we did, and came back down. Well, we went to the address they gave us, and the courthouse was certainly there. The 44 years is a long time, and a lot can happen. And that courthouse that was there when they were there apparently was torn down, and this new courthouse then was built in its place. So we drove around the front of it. And then we turned around and drove back down the same street so we could see the two cannons that were mounted on the other side of the street that pointed away from the courthouse. When we had finished that run through there, back out onto the street, we made a left turn, and we could see the wedding chapel directly across the street. And this wedding chapel is where they were married, December 18th, 1969, 44 years ago. After we finished our trip around the courthouse, we went on home then. But at the time that we left them from Montana Mike's, we went up on Main Street, and the first thing we encountered was the Coleman Theater, which is a renowned theater where full-blown plays and various and sundry other events are taking place. It's an old theater. It's been there a long time. Just been kept up to date. And although we were not able to take a tour, they do have tours there during the daytime, during the week. Well, from there, we went on up onto Old Route 66 to a small town just north of Miami named Commerce. And we took a short shot of the water tower. It was hard to get, so we couldn't get the shot we wanted, but we did get a shot of it. And then there was a couple of things there that we really found interesting. Was a Dairy King that reminded us of perhaps the Dairy Queen drive-ins of yesteryear, although There's really no connection, but it had that kind of appearance. And then across the street from that was a restored automobile service station from yesteryear. It was named Allen's Fill-In Station, and we thought that was rather unique and colorful. Then we went on up north of there to a little ghost town, really is no longer there, called Carden, Oklahoma. And there's just mostly this one building that's vacant and isolated. Carden was part of the ghost town effect that caused Pitcher, which would be our next stop, to become a ghost town. Pitcher, Oklahoma became a ghost town because back in the 1920s, a mining industry popped up there. It was subsurface mining, so there was a lot of shafts, and they were right there in town and out around the town, all around. It seems like there was no consideration as to where to put a mine shaft, just wherever it seemed like there might be either zinc or lead to mine. And that's what was mined out of there. There was a horrific lot of mining that went on there for decades, both zinc and lead. The zinc apparently was okay, although it did make a mining mess, but the lead mining turned out to be horrific because the debris that they pulled out of those mines, they just stacked them up, made great big piles out of them, which they're called chat piles today. Those piles were contaminated with lead, and it wasn't known for a long time until in the 1980s that this lead was making the people of Pitcher ill. And an investigation was launched, and it was discovered that about 35% of all the children in Pitcher were suffering from the effects of this lead poisoning in the water, who knows what else. Also, about 85 to 90% of all of the structures, the homes, the businesses, everything was all in jeopardy, in a terrible state of deterioration internally, and a lot of it externally because of all of this. Mine shafts collapse, and when they do, they explode. They sound like large explosions, and they shake the earth like an earthquake, and it's frightening to people. And that went on and it's still going on. It's been going on for a long time. When about 1996, there was a large movement started to begin to figure out some way to resolve this. And the only way it could be resolved was to get the residents of Pitcher out of there and close that town down. And so time went on as they worked on this. There was a lot of arguments, a lot of discussion, a lot of action. The government got involved. The EPA, Environmental Protection Agency, became involved. And eventually, the eminent domain, the law of eminent domain, took over. And the federal government began to buy individual properties from people, giving them a certain amount of money so that they would have some way to leave Pitcher and start over again. The amounts of money were, as usual with eminent domain, not necessarily adequate, but they were what they were. Then in 2008, a tornado occurred at Pitcher, destroyed over 100 homes and killed about 7 or so people. And that was a strong push, an added push in the deterioration and in the end times of Pitcher. And then in September of 2009, Pitcher, Oklahoma became an official ghost town. There is still a few people that live there, but it is fewer than you could count on your hand. and they've just simply refused to leave. Now, these videos, these photos that you're seeing is the state of Picher today in 2013. It's a sad story. It's a true story. It is truly a ghost town. Any of you watching this, if you would like to know more about it, there is a movie available. You can probably get it off Amazon.com. The name of it is The Creek Runs Red. It really gets into the hearts and minds of the people of Picher and tells a great story about how all this happened. We enjoyed our day trip to Miami. I'm sure we will return again before too long for the purpose of meeting with Merle and Pat again to have another hour-and-a-half lunch with them. Until then, that's so much for Miami, Oklahoma and the surrounding area. I hope you guys enjoyed this little story.